Thanksgiving on Thursday. Let's get started. Bang, bang, bang. Hi guys, and welcome to another 100 episode. Today we will be talking about cats. Kidding. Thanksgiving on Thursday. So let's get started. Now, what is this Thanksgiving about? Now, we all know about the first Thanksgiving. The thing where Wampanoag Indians and Pilgrims meet together while bumping onto a rock, and calling that rock Plymouth Rock and calling the settlement Plymouth. And then finally, they created a big feast after learning how to plant, and voila, the end. Or is it? Well, generally that's what we think about it. Think is the true Thanksgiving and what most American schools teach us. Well, I have never been to an American school, but it's probably true. And it's not true. First of all, that is not the first Thanksgiving, and that's not how the first Thanksgiving was created, even though the Thanksgiving is based on that day of the Pilgrims. But that's not how it started. But for now, let's talk about Jack and Annie going into the past. For Jack and Annie, the Thanksgiving was like what they always thought was going to happen. Firstly, they thought that Thanksgiving was just turkeys and farming. They forgot that turkeys back then didn't need ovens to heat up. They had their own brick ovens with an iron pivot, which is very hot when you touch, so you're going to have to be a bit cautious about it. And about that, we'll explain later why I said iron pivot. Now for now, Jack and Annie have arrived at the settlement of Plymouth. And basically, everything was sort of happening at the same time. So this is the first year of the Plymouth colony, and they were going to have a first Thanksgiving. And the first Thanksgiving is as awesome as it happens. Turns out the first Thanksgiving for the first separatists were actually this fasting and giving thanks to God. God, I want you to make me as thin as possible today on Thanksgiving. Thank you. Amen. Does that amen make sense? Who wants to be thin as possible? But turns out, no. They never did actually have that. And for Thanksgiving, everything is sort of true in the devious terms. As everything is true for Thanksgiving, has Thanksgiving even possible? Well, it turns out no one's thought of it as Thanksgiving. It will be coined down by Abraham Lincoln about 200 years later. But as the last Thursday of September. But then Franklin D. Roosevelt changed it to the fourth Thursday of every September, just in case when there are 5 Thursdays in September, which is sort of lame. 5 Septembers in Thursday. Who wants 5 Septembers in Thursday when they have a month ban? And as long as I'm concerned, Thanksgiving is just a special holiday that we think of to thank our loved ones. But now that story is about done, and that Jack and Annie only helped in creating soup and probably were useful in hunting, except they had too much empathy, let's start with the true and the falses about the Thanksgiving. Firstly, the colonists were actually left because they were trying to separate from the church and reform the church. First, they headed to the Netherlands, but then their kids were basically acting like Dutch people, and well, yeah, they didn't really want to be Dutch. They really wanted to become Englishmen while worshipping their own gods. But well, a good thing to do is to just worship in secret while you're still living in England, which is not a good way of life. But with living in the Netherlands, changed the plan until their children started acting Dutch-like. And when that happens, well, you know what? It's moving time. Basically, now that that's about it, then they decided to move somewhere in America. They paid all their debts by fishing and selling all that fish. And first, Squanto was never actually his name. The Squanto's name isn't Squanto, it's actually Il Squanto. And it's a bit hard to pronounce for a lot of English people, so that's why we call it him Squanto. And Squanto was not even the first one, but no white person to even contact with the natives. It turns out there was this guy named Samoset, like get it? Sunset? Okay, you can't see the sunset from here, but still. Samoset and Sunset. And he basically became the first interpreter and Native American to meet with the pilgrims. Now that that's done, there are some things that could still happen on this special time of day. Samoset basically introduced them to a little history of where they were building on their colony. And then he returned to trade with a lot of men and Squanto himself. And then Chief Massasoit came and created a peace treaty with the governor of the Pilgrims. And they had a peace treaty which lasted until the chief's death. But within the first year of the colonists arriving, right after the Thanksgiving, which turns out doesn't have a turkey at all, Squanto realized that he needed some things to do. Firstly, he realized that he had a lot of power for being the only Native American to speak English fluently, other than Samoset, who speaks broken English. So he convinced everyone else to try to overthrow Chief Massasoit, who when Chief Massasoit heard it and actually got it, executed him just before the first year of the Pilgrims thriving. Which is bad for Squanto. And now that they don't have any English interpreter anymore, how are they going to negotiate? The treaty lasted all the way until the Wampanoag were actually wiped out, and so were the Native Americans. So yeah, I guess that is about it. But there is nothing wrong of having a Thanksgiving dinner. In Christianity, everybody thinks of it as a fasting day and thanking God. And that the Native Americans were the other. And that the Native Americans, by religious terms, were godless. That they either had to convert into Christianity or get wiped out. There was nothing wrong for having a turkey or a meal on Thanksgiving. But before you ever do that, remember that the true story of Thanksgiving and not the fairy tale, as my cat doesn't really want to listen to. And that is the end of this episode. So I hope you guys learned the actual truth of Thanksgiving and what this really means. And before I leave, I will give you a good lesson. The Wampanoag world, your world, and my world, all combined, are not separate worlds. They're actually one world. So that is the end of this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Keep the last thing I said in mind. And I hope you guys also learned about the truth and not the fairy tale of Thanksgiving. And how his first Thanksgiving is. With no turkey at all. Sorry to say that. But from all of Avail, see you in the next episode. And catch you later. See ya.